all of you for taking your time to come to Migrating for this auspicious moment in the book launch of Migrating to Australia Good Men, written by Ken Song and Michael Song. So again, I would like to thank you all very much. So before we start the event, I'd like to make sure that everyone would kindly switch off your phone or put it into silent mode so as to not interrupt the flow of the program. So just to have a few minutes to do that. Thank you. So to start off the event, I would like to thank Mr. Tony Poa, the Member of Parliament for Petaling Jaya Utara, who have graced the book launch, for taking his time to be here. So I'd like to thank Mr. Tony Poa for coming here. Please give him a round of applause. I would also like to thank Mr. Michael Song and Mr. Ken Song, who have tirelessly documented their experiences in living as migrants in Australia, and for Ken Song to have come all the way from Australia to be here for his book launch. Thank you again.
Thank you.
A round of applause, everyone. So I would like to start my speech, my opening introductory remark, to give a personal account of this book. So I'm in charge of the publicity of the book, and I obviously had to read the book. Now, being as an academic, I was struck by the level of in-depth research that the authors have undertaken in constructing and to dispel the myth surrounding migration. Now, Mr. Ken and Michael Song have planned to emigrate to Australia in 2004. So they have had 11 years of living as migrants in Australia, and in that 11 years, they have seen that their aspiration for first world ideals and the fervor to catch the Australian dreams have been struck down by the unutopic realities that they have faced. That they have seen that the first world ideal is not as true as we seem it to be. And in that they saw that these ideals in education attainment, in business opportunities ventures, in non-discriminative policies in education and practices, and the steady climb up in the corporate ladder, and ultimately for the just societal values of tolerance in multiculturalism, bore complexities and layers which are not as cut and dried as simply the benefits of crossing the sea. So the Migrating to Australia book documents the myths surrounding the promise of migration, the dilemmas, the ironies, the opportunities, the challenges, the trial and tribulation, hope and despair, bitterness and excitement, all captured as the brothers strike through the dimensions of life in Australia. Ken and Michael provide a comprehensive compendium of the Australian pandemonium in housing, education, business opportunities and culture through anecdotes, personal accounts of Asians living in Australia, and also drawing upon research content. So without delaying much time, I would like to hand over the speech to Mr. Tony Poa, who himself have had an experience living outside of Malaysia in the UK as he furthered his studies in the University of Oxford. So I would like to hand over the speech to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Daya for inviting me here. Thank you very much to Ken and Michael, who I'm not sure whether to say who allowed me this opportunity to be here, or who are traveling because I'm here, and whether I would actually promote the book or condemn the book. When I got a call from Yapua, from Migrating to be the guest of honor for this book, the first thing that came to my mind is Migrating to Australia. Bloody hell, you want me to come and promote to the scheme to ask people to migrate to Australia? You want me to die? Then, of course, when you look at the title carefully, there was the nice pun there, which is the good man. Good man. And I thought it is perhaps a good opportunity to share some of my thoughts that I don't usually get to share in other platforms. In other places, you only talk about 1MDB. You don't talk about your experiences overseas. You don't talk about whether it's good to migrate or not. But let me first make it clear so that there's no misunderstanding, especially what the press write what I say, is that I respect an individual's decision to migrate or to remain in Malaysia. That is an individual's right. And that is an inalienable right that nobody should judge you for. You should not be judged for migrating, neither should you be judged for staying put where you are. But it is of course in my value to tell you that it is a better deal to stay. And in my case, I've stayed as was mentioned earlier in UK for 3 years. I have friends in Australia. I've heard many stories, some of them which are repeated here. And I would never, for the hell of me, think about migrating, especially not to the UK, US, or Australia. It's a completely different world. I studied in UK, I studied in Oxford. I have many UK friends. I wasn't one of those who stayed around, stuck around with just the Asian friends and stuff. Anyway, in the university where I went, there was not many of us anyway, so you are forced to mingle around with everyone else. But it was just a completely different world from something I was used to. And my conversations with my friends in Australia, I went to Perth last year. I stayed with a supporter who was telling me that his wife had a nervous breakdown for practically a year after moving to Australia. Because it's a completely different lifestyle, and I think some of the things are mentioned here. Finding a job, whether you actually have a family life or your life just gets turned completely upside down. From a fairly reasonably well-to-do PJ resident, where you basically have everything laid out in front of you. When you move over there, you become part of the lower middle income group that everything you have to do yourself. You have to do your gardening, you have to do your own. You can't hire workers, because they are all too expensive and too fussy and too restrictive for you to do anything else other than to do it yourself. They even build their own sheds themselves, in the house. You don't get to call, hey, I pay you this amount of money, you come and settle my backyard or shed for me or clean my gardening and stuff. It's just different. And then I've been to Melbourne, where Ken is. I've got friends who were former reporters, went there, stuck around for 6 months looking for a job. I mean, you would have expected that in Melbourne, given the vibrancy of the place, would have been relatively easy to find a job. Doesn't matter what, a job. Cannot. They have to go so far beyond what they are used to finally get a job. And they tell me that actually finding jobs in Australia isn't as, what do you call it, as meritocratic as you would have thought it should be in a country like Australia. It's actually even more connection-based than it is in Malaysia. I cannot imagine anyone who wants a job in Malaysia not getting a job within 3 months. In Australia, they are going around begging for all sorts of jobs. She was a journalist. She went around looking for jobs as a clerk, as a accounts assistant, as a museum, whatever those people help you out. You know. And finally, she got a job. She did get a job, but it's through a friend's friend. You need that sort of connection to actually finally land a job, and usually it's fairly inferior to your qualifications. And I do have a friend that's happily settled there. He's a very good friend of mine from PJ, formerly from Bangladesh, he moved down to me. He went there because he has 4 kids. And once you migrate PR, the good thing about having 4 kids in Australia is your education is free. If you are a PR, it's free. So it reduces a lot of cost burden if you want good quality schools and you don't want to pay international school fees over here. If you have 1 or 2, maybe you can afford it. When you have 4 to send to international schools, which are costing $60,000 a year, it becomes a real burden. But even then, and my friend is now a sort of, what do you call it? Something like what you do, I think. People who welcome overseas migrants and help them settle in the city. So my friend is based in Adelaide. In case anyone wants to go to Adelaide, I can introduce you. And he'll tell you all the cons. And after you see all the cons, you still want to move, then he try and help you. Because otherwise it can get very painful. Finding the right schools, again it is written about it here. Finding the right schools, staying in the areas, I think there's a phrase in here that says that it is better to stay in a crappy place next to a good school than to stay in a very good place next to a lousy school. And you have to adjust your entire life around your kids and where they study. And that's one of the reasons why this other friend of mine in Perth, the wife had a sort of a nervous breakdown. But for me, the biggest reason, or rather the second biggest reason, why I wouldn't think about migrating, but that's me lah. Okay? One is, of course, I feel comfortable in space. This is home. This is where I want to be. Of course, it's not perfect. We all know all the problems. Why is I don't be doing what I'm doing? We all know all the problems. But for me, it's given that you know all the problems, but you like the place, then let's do something to fix it. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the other reason, there's the push and pull. The pull is, I like this place. The push is, I cannot imagine my kids growing up in those countries. They would be completely cut from the culture and values that we grew up in. Completely. They will grow up a completely different person from who you are. I think that is a sacrifice, to me, is a sacrifice that you need to make if you plan to have your kids grow up and study in a migrated country like Australia. They'll grow up speaking a different language from what we speak. They'll grow up knowing things completely different from what you grew up knowing. They will have different types of friends and different types of values. That bit is touched on as well in this book. So they have good quality education. Some selective. So you make sure you go to the right schools. But even if you do go to the right schools, and I'm sure if I were to migrate, I'm sure I can get my kids to the right schools. I cannot imagine my kids growing up culturally completely different from who I am. I think that's the biggest challenge that many people will face. So is it something that you're willing to let go your entire roots and let your subsequent descendants? I know it's a very Chinese is what 老土 way of thinking, is老土, very 传统, very 老土. It's just that feeling in you. Are you comfortable your next generation being completely different from who you are or who your parents are. If you are, then it's a good place. Again, like I said, no value judgment. For me, I wasn't comfortable, and I cannot imagine that happening. That's one of the reasons why there's no push for me to go overseas, even though I know if I go overseas, I wouldn't have a problem getting a job, I wouldn't have a problem getting my kids into decent schools, but it just didn't strike me at all. And I think these are things that perhaps many Malaysians need to consider. Some people have migrated happily, my friend did, but I have also seen many others who have many problems after migrating. And I think that's why this book is actually good. If you actually read through it, it's actually a very honest account of what is good and what is bad. A lot of books will tell you, these are all the good things about Australia and why you should migrate to Australia. This one tells you the good stuff, but in fact, I think the more you read it, the more you think, maybe I don't want to go. I actually think that it's slightly weighted towards the think twice or think thrice before you actually go. I mean, they do tell you the good things about moving to Australia, but if you look at there's this chapter, the chapter that I like best is actually the first chapter where it outlines all the myths. The myths. Western societies are more accepting and tolerant of cultural, racial, and religious differences. The one that I like. Westerners are interested in and open to different cultures. And yeah, so Australians value family lives. Australians value time. So they don't believe in working beyond 5 p.m. By and large, Melbourne I think changing a little bit, but the rest of Australia, they don't believe in working beyond 5 p.m. You know, they also have the civil service culture in Malaysia where you have tea in the late morning, you have tea in the afternoon, same thing. And at night, no life. Almost practical darkness. Here at night, anytime you can come out restaurants, teh tarik, shopping center, anything you want. Over there, I was just there for first time I was there, I was there for 2 days. What do I do after 5? You know, it's that sort of thing. They value their time, but that doesn't necessarily equate to they value their family life. So I think that's the thing that I'm sure the audience will elaborate after this. So for those who are contemplating migrating for reasons that we understand, think twice, read the book first, and I think the authors will probably advise have some acclimatization trips there first. See whether you really like it or you can really bear the change, the complete change in your life and in your kids' future lives before you actually make the final decisions to shift all your assets, all your lives, and all your future aspirations to a new country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Phua. Indeed, the element of culture embedded in this book is an area in which that should interest all of us. The fact that there is so much cultural convergence and divergence upon migration, yet the issue of migration inflames many Malaysians. So now we have come to the moment where we want to launch the book launching of the unveiling of the plot. So I call upon Mr. Pat Chong, Ms. Dato Lawrence Chong Kampeng to proceed in front, and as well as Mr. Tony Phua, Ken Song, and Michael Song for the unveiling of the plot. Thank you. Round of applause, everyone.
Just give it up.
Thank you. I would like to, for everyone to remain at the front because the authors, Mr. Michael and Mr. Ken, have generously brought a few gifts for Pak Chong and Dr. Lawrence and Mr. Tony Bois. So they would like to hand over a few gifts to them. Alright, so first, we would like to take this moment to present some mementos to three distinguished individuals who have done so much for our country. First, to YB Tony Bois, we thank you for your tireless efforts and personal sacrifices to help Malaysians from all walks of life. Second, to Dr. Lawrence Chan Kamping, we thank you for your relentless efforts and unwavering commitment to help Malaysians and people from all over the world find a purpose in their lives through your inspiring work all these years. And third, to our visionary publisher, Mr. Chong Ton Sing or Pak Chong. We thank you for keeping Malaysians informed and enlightened about issues that many commercial publishers think are unprofitable. Thank you. I'd like Mr. Tony Paul, Ken and Michaelson to be seated as we proceed to the next part of our program. Right, so we have come to another yet important part of the event, which is the discussion of the top 10 things or facts to know before you move out of Australia. And as I've mentioned, migration is an idea that inflames many Malaysians for wanting a better quality of life. And they have come here to dispel the myths of migration to you. So I proceed to Mr. Mike Ken Song. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karuna. Thank you everyone for making time to come here. Really appreciate everybody's effort. We hope that we can be useful, make ourselves useful in one way or another by sharing some of our experiences here. So perhaps before I start going through the slides, I would like to maybe briefly introduce our background, right? Born and bred in KL, right? We grew up in Kapong, right? In secondary, high school, years we spent in Sultan Abdul Samad in PJ. So then we went to private colleges, and then got into university in Australia. I studied in a small town called Wagga Wagga because the tuition fees there are cheaper, right? It is halfway between Melbourne and Sydney. In the border town in New South Wales. And my brother, he studied in Swinburne, in Hawthorne. So after graduation, we studied management. My brother was in finance. We came back and worked a few years as marketing and export executives. And my brother, being a very entrepreneurial guy that he is, started a very small company. We supply pharmaceutical products and healthcare products, mainly beauty products, imported them from Taiwan, Japan, and supply them to Watson, Guardian in Malaysia, as well as in Singapore, and some other retail chains as well, such as Apex and all that. So things were going, I would say, pretty well for us, right? Starting off as young chicos, graduated, and about the time by 2000. We decided that we should go one step further, right? So what is the next step of advancement? We thought maybe we should go to greener pasture, and we missed the place where we spent as students, so we make the move, right? We applied for the permanent residence, we got it, and reluctantly by 2004 we have to make that move, right? To go into the, what they call, in Cantonese it's Yimankam, means migration prison, right? So we had to go 2004. On that morning we left. It was Sunday morning, last day of October, we still remember. Our former Deputy Prime Minister happened to come back from Germany after the medical treatment. So it was a very busy morning, Sunday morning in KLA. So we flew off, you know, and 11 years later, you know, I'm back here sharing this experience with you, and my brother is here. He took his own advice. He relocated back here last month, right, to do something to advance his career. Because we left this place, right, before the boom. Of course, there's always boom and bust, you know, but we left the place, right, in our 30s, at the peak of our, you know, career, right. It's easy to pick because we started from a low place, right, and in our mid-30s, early 30s, we left, and obviously we want to do more in our career. So we thought that with the right qualifications, right, with the right mindset and right attitude, we can perhaps go one step further. All right, I'm not saying that you know, we are not, but it's a different experience. We try to learn, you know, from all this difficult experience. So we came here. We went there, and then worked all kinds of jobs. In the beginning, couldn't find the jobs that is you know, equivalent to what we were doing back home. So I worked in a call center. My brother worked in a call center as well for a few months before we decided to reinvent ourselves. So we got the right qualifications on teaching. I did my master's. He did his you know, certificates and diplomas for teaching, and we started teaching. Right, I got a job teaching, but not only one job, a few jobs. Like what YB has mentioned, you know, to get a job in one piece is a bit of a far stretch at this moment because the whole structural economic situation is like, how should I put it? Every month, you get big companies, blue chip companies, you know, they announce news of redundancies because they always do that in the last minute just to reduce the damage, right? Damage control, usually on a Friday, right? Because people are more interested in foodie news. You know, more interested in the foodie matches, you see. So almost every month you see retrenchment, you see relocation. So jobs are going away big time, right? Jobs that can be replaced has been replaced, right? You know, the call centers, you know, within the ICT industry. Not only that, you know, even architects. You know, we were told that some architects were retrenched because they are getting the draftsmen in Penang to do the, you know, job for them, right? Because of competitive currency and everything, you know, just makes better business sense, right? Of course, some people will say that we are sort of a sour grape case. I would say I tend not to think that way because the reason is there are people who are sometimes much more qualified than us, people with PhDs, right? They are also doing sectional teaching. So what I forgot to tell you just now was that I did not have a full-time job, right? I've been teaching since 2006, April, as a sectional teacher. I teach in Monash College, Monash Uni, right? Sometimes in the MBA program, the marketing subject, as a tutor, right? And RMIT Business Tape School, Cambridge International College, as a sectional teacher. So they give me hours by the term. So when the term ends, we wait for the new term, you know, depending on how many numbers are enrolled, right? Then, you know, we get more hours or less hours depending on that, you see. But I would say that the hours, you know, the hourly rate is not too bad, right? Minimum is like $50 per hour, right? But if you teach in uni, you can go as high as 140 per hour, right? Depending on what subjects and, you know, what level you are at. But then again, the tax rates are high and things like that. But anyway, you know, more in the book, right? But if you like to contact us, right, we will, you know, try to give you our opinion as well, our perspectives, right? Very subjective, but it's up to you, right? We want to encourage people to think for themselves. That's why we have this sheep here. You know, as much as we hate it, but human beings sometimes we really operate like sheep. You know, we are always affected with this herd mentality. So instead of, you know, denying that, why not we, two of us, thought we accept the fact that we are a bit sheepish, but we can be a bit smarter, right? Sheep can be smarter if they think. So instead of man, we should say good man. Bad man, right? It's always a man at the end, you know, to find out more. Okay, so let me go straight into the slides here. book, right? The book idea was born out of all the countless hours we spent chatting. Sometimes with friends would come over to visit us, we tell them. But there's only so much you can say, to people in person. So we thought we put them in writing, right? But we're also quite grateful that we have time to do some reading over there. Whereas here is a bit things are going so fast, busy and all that. It's a good thing, but there's also a bad side. Sometimes you don't have time for introspection. You don't have time for reflection. Of course, we are not disciplined enough. If we are, we should be able to do that anywhere in the world. But anyway, the book is addressed to two categories of audiences. Right? Those that already made up their mind can read the book because we have tips, right? We have suggestions, right? How you can succeed, right? As a new migrant, in Australia. And those who are still considering, they can perhaps read it a few more times. And like what YB Pony has mentioned, yes, go there, make a few trips at different seasons of the year, talk to different people, not only one city, maybe do a tour, touchdown from Brisbane, fly back from Melbourne, just to get a feel of it. Don't just take other people's word, because your situation is different. Everybody is unique, right? And everybody has a different purpose in life, as what a great mentor, Dato' Lauren Chan, has mentioned, right? Which is very, very true, right? The third type of people is that we want to address. Okay, we're going to address the first category first. Okay, all right. The top 10 facts that you should know before moving out of Malaysia. So you could give this a thought, right? First, fact number one, it will take about 1 year to find a good job. When I was there, right, I have friends who are very supportive, right, from the unis. Some of my friends know him. His name is called Hiro Hasegawa, right, Japanese guy, close friend. He worked in Collins Street, cyber security. Steady job, white collar, finance industry. Every month or every fortnight, or minimum, he will call me, to find out my progress, right, or try to help. He said, friends are really important. I really appreciate it. Somehow I feel pressured, right? I thought I can go this far, 100 miles an hour, but things still not picking up, right? I still have to, go to library, do a lot of research, right? Make a lot of, applications, and get a lot of rejections, right? So I have to be realistic, right? Different pace of life, as YB has alluded to, After 5 people go home, so things don't get done too much. So what can be done here in 3 days, perhaps it takes 1.5 weeks to get done there. All the things done, correspondence and communication. So you just have to, slow down, be patient, which is also good qualities to cultivate. Very good opportunity to do that. Take about 1 year. Both of us have experienced, right, that, some of the difficulties and come up with some ideas. And we have tried it and it actually worked. Right? So there are 3 contrarian tips to get a job, and that is not mentioned in the book. The first is put your resume down, in a cover letter, right? 1 page. Instead of using font size 12, you can go to 16, right? 1.5 spacing with your photo on top of the letter, right? The cover letter, right? The colored one, because I think people connect more with the paper, with the face, right? The face attached to, white, black ink and white paper, and keep it short, right? 1 page will do, right? Because you have already printed out that for them, right? Don't just send it electronically. Print it out, hard copies, buy an envelope, send it to them. And the other sheet of paper will be your CV, will be your resume, maximum page 2 pages. Because when it's 2 pages, again, it's very brief. If you have 8 jobs experience in Australia, in Malaysia, why not, compact it into 2? Let's face it, they're not very interested, right, to know what we do here in Malaysia, right? If we come from Europe, things could be a bit different, or US, 3 years, IT analyst in San Francisco, we're all attractive, you see. The third tip is get some volunteer experience. Before I really got the teaching job, I actually built up my confidence working as a volunteer, right, in adult migrant education services. Again, was mentioned by YB. Right? This agency actually sometimes employ these volunteers. So they send us, they give us training and send us to nearby homes. And I chose one family, Afghan couple, very nice couple, near my home. Right? So I teach them English every week, right? 1 hour per week. And that lasted for about almost close to 1 year, which I think was a very good deal because at the end of that 1 year, I got the staff, the coordinator, to write me a testimony letter to say that I've actually volunteered for 1 year. Whereas in fact, I only do it once a week, right? And sometimes I do it once a fortnight if I'm too busy, right? Read the letters for them, help them with some English, those kind of volunteer jobs. So it's not really like 1 year contribution as such, but it lasted for 1 year. So I think it's a very good deal, you know. So don't take too much of your time and you still feel yourself, you know, doing something for the community, right? Which is, I think, very good, very important to keep the sanity. I mean, if I think I'm helpless, and I see somebody more helpless than me and I'm doing some help, giving them some help, I feel better, you see. Number 2, let's go to the next one. Fact number 2 is that it is better to live in the worst house in a good suburb than to live in the best house in a bad, in the best house in a very bad, dangerous suburb. Right? How do you find out? That's why you have to go there to personally see the place, right? To personally get a feel of it. Can't really explain to you, but you really have to breathe the air, you know. Yeah, and look around. Look at the people. You know, look at the lampposts. Right? Do they have shoes hanging on the overhead lines? Right? I was told that these areas are really some codes, right? They mark territories, or they tell you that drugs can be is available nearby, right? The house in front could be, you know, you can knock on doors and you can get your supply. So, yeah, something to watch out for. Also, you like to avoid places with a lot of graffiti, right? Very nice, colorful graffiti.
The gang sign.
Yeah, the gang signs as well. Yeah, that means gang signs, not just graffiti, more than graffiti. And then you have hooligans walking around with beer cans under broad daylight because, I mean, in Malaysia, one thing I feel after I left here for 9 years, right, the last trip I came back in 2006 for a friend's wedding, is that everybody has a job in Malaysia. Right? Everybody has a job. Everybody represents a company. Right? Everybody is doing something. But over there, because it's a welfare state, right? So you don't have to work that hard to find a job. Right? Some of them, their job is, you know, to sit around for 2 hours in the Centrelink office to get the money, the unemployment, you know, support, income support payment. That's what they do. Right? Public housing. Public housings are, you know, high-rise apartment-like buildings. These are housing commissions, right, for people with low income, recent migrants, refugees, asylum seekers. They live in those areas, right? You try to avoid those areas. Sometimes expensive suburb doesn't mean good areas, because suburbs become expensive because they're near the CBD. And prices have inflated so much. But because they're so near the CBD, they have a long history. And because they have a long history, right, they have early migrant settlers there. So housing commission is there. Say for example, I have a friend, he lives in Flemington, again, hero, my friend will know. Right, Flemington is a good place, Kensington is a good place, but the next door suburb is Flemington, where they have a big housing commission. Right, so even though he is an affluent suburb, right, he will get a lot of this, you know, African refugee, you know, former asylum seekers, right, the youths with some problems. I'm not saying that all Africans are like that, right? So when you see 5 or 6 male adults in a car, right, you know, parking around in a petrol station that has closed, 3 cars, you know, you just don't go there, you know, just don't stop. Fact number 3, schoolyard bullying is rampant. Right? It is a very under-publicized problem because, in Australia, paperwork is very important. Statistics, facts, and figures are very important. Right? So if they report every case, that will look bad. Right? That will affect the public image, even the whole city. Right? I was told by Australian friends in the Flinders Street station, certain hours you just don't want to find yourself there. And if things happen, you report to the police, they will not put down on writing, put down on paper, because that will straight away mean that next year it will not be in the list of 10 most livable cities in the world. You see? You can check the facts, don't take our word for it, but something worth pondering. Fact number 4 is that an Australian education can be a two-edged sword. Right? Again, if you have strong family values, things can be different. Right? You can get very good family, life, upbringing over there in certain suburbs. You don't have to go to the best suburbs anyway, right? Overrated, right? Overvalued to some of us who cannot afford to stretching it. Like my father, he actually had to sell a house to send me to Australia, right? And I mention this because it's a big sacrifice for him. He worked as a bank officer, right, for more than 30 years in Maybank, and sent 3 of us there, right? It's a big sacrifice. And sometimes I really feel that I have not worked hard enough to justify, that opportunity. And I'll just be honest to you. And you do get good quality education here in Malaysia, right? If you really do your homework, if you really ask around, if you really do your research, I think the school is as good as the teacher that teach, in whatever class. So it's something really personal. You can't just say that, in a broad brushing manner that Malaysian education is just hopeless. But which institution? Who are the teachers? What are the people that you get into contact with? Here are some alternatives that we would like to offer, right? Like I've been teaching, Michael been teaching. We also did some research in the process of writing the book. And we listened to some of the consultants here in Malaysia who actually help students find more affordable education overseas. Ireland is one good example. The Germans, the Swiss institutions, right? They have a good work ethic, right? In this time of economic challenge, the German products are still selling, right? The export is unwavering. So learn German, get free education in German universities. Go to Japan, get a scholarship, right, which is more easily available. So some of us who cannot afford to go, right, to some Western countries that are too expensive for some. Business not as usual. This is fact number 5. Something that we fail to look at, right? Even as students, we never get to experience the high cost of living. Yes, the cost of tuition is expensive, but we never pay the council bill, we never pay the taxes, we never set up businesses, we never have to go through the legal compliances, the bureaucracy and red tape. So when the government gets too big, these are some of the problems, right? Freedom can be stifled, right? Political freedom to vote doesn't mean economic freedom to build your financial position. Number 6. Welfare state is not always fair after all, right? Just to give you a personal anecdotal experience, a friend of mine, a colleague, she actually opted for government job, working in an unemployment office, right? Because the job there is more stable. But what they try to do there, their job responsibility is to help people get the dough money, right? And to make sure that people don't misuse the system, abuse the system. So they make sure they actually go out, look for jobs. Every 2 weeks they come back to report that I still can't find the job that I wanted, so then they can get the pay, right? But what was not said publicly, right, something that you should share with us privately, is that what they try to do is they will tell people the loopholes, how they can get more benefits. Because at the end of the financial year, the government will make judgments according to how much was spent, how much was distributed. So if you have less unemployment benefit given out that year. So next year you get less budget. If you have less budget, they don't need so many people in the office. So you probably lose your job. Everybody tries to protect the job. They will help them get the dough money. Right? You see, you've got to meet the quota. Again, it is anecdotal, right? So some of them are research, some of them are anecdotal, but I make it a point that this is something I heard, right? This is the tax rate, right? The tax brackets. So the second and the third book, we actually interviewed some successful migrants, right? How they made it in Australia. So there's one Indian migrant who is a CIO of an Australian stock exchange 100 company, carsales.com.au. He's getting about $670,000 per year. That is his package. So you can know how much he has to pay in terms of tax. Probably has to work 5 months to pay his tax before he gets to keep his income every year, right? So I think this picture speaks 1,000 words. It pays to assimilate. So if you still decide that you want to go there, it pays to assimilate. Learn out a different culture. It can be a very good experience, right? Not only you learn from knowing other people's culture, but you also get to understand yourself better, right? In terms of adaptability. But from my experience, I think Malaysians, we really do have this inbuilt adaptability, right? We can adjust. We are more culturally sensitive. I mean, I compare myself to the Taiwanese, to the Chinese. I know how blessed I am as a Malaysian. I mean, if you are an Indian Malaysian or Malay Malaysian, the same thing, right? The Malays here will be more, culturally sensitive than an Indonesian, right? Because society is more homogeneous, right? But anyway, it pays to assimilate. Some of the things that you can do is learn about the sports. If you don't play the sports, at least you should know about the sports. As I mentioned to you before, one of the biggest problems is, schoolyard bullying. Kids who are not good in sports tend to be like sidelined, sometimes to the extent of being bullied. But if you're not good at playing the sports, you should at least learn out the facts and figures, the rules, follow the developments, and then you can get to join them in a conversation so that you'll be like one of them, then you will not be outcast. Fact number 8, when dealing with real estates, there are some things that you have to watch out for as well. So I'd like to pass this on to Michael. Maybe he can address some of this.
So if you still decide to go to Australia, so naturally one of the major things that you have to take care is accommodation, right? So that's where real estate agents come in. So if you are looking to own a property, look at least for 10 real estate agents, okay? Because these people know that you are a migrant, all right? I mean, at least 10 properties before you make a decision. Why? What's the reason? Because they know we are migrant, we are not well versed with the area. They usually introduce you those properties that no locals want, the not popular one. Yeah, they try to sell the cold stock first. Okay? Yeah. Right? So that is one major point you have to, beware of, because this is what they definitely do. Okay? So if you are renting, make sure you have secured some references. Right? Renting a place is very different in Australia compared to Malaysia. They value a lot on references. Okay? Where you have rented before, okay? Is there a reference from the other real estate agent that you deal with? Okay, so if you are coming from Malaysia, right? So you can get references such as if you are renting, you'll find a landlord to write you some testimony. Okay, because it's a different culture. It's a different culture. Okay, different culture. For example. Over here, you can walk into a hair salon and cut your hair, right? So over there, you need an appointment, okay? Again, it's different, okay? Yeah. So always negotiate with real estate agent. Don't think that it's an Asian thing to bargain, okay? The thing that will tell you is, okay, Another guy is bidding for this property and he's offering 5,000 more than you. Okay, that is the standard tagline. So don't fall for it. Okay. Alright, so when dealing, fact number 9, when dealing with your children growing up in Australia. Alright, so this is again the value in yourself, like what Wiley said. Alright, he cannot imagine his kids growing up in Australia. Alright, so that is one of the reasons, not in Australia, in a Western, as a Western world. Alright, so again, personally, I don't think there's any judgment whether it's right or wrong. It's just a personal preference. Okay, and do not influence by others people's advice. Alright, you need to discover your own value. Okay, your own value, whether what you're doing is compatible to what you truly believe in. Right, so that is one of the major reasons I decided to resettle back in Malaysia, because I don't want my kid growing up as a stranger to me. Okay, right. So, but if you are okay with that, then that's fine. Alright? That's perfectly fine. But I see a lot of Asian parents is somewhere in between. They want their kids to assimilate in the mainstream, but yet they want to maintain their own culture. Alright? So that way is very difficult. You need to face a reality. Okay? So Asian parents tend to speak in Australia, tend to try to speak the local language like Mandarin, okay, or Cantonese at home to their children. Hopefully, trying to bring them up with some Asian values and some Asian language. That is fine until that kid reaches something like 11 or 12 years old. Then that is a challenge, right? Because it's not a cool thing, right? To speak this weird sounding language in school. Okay? So English is the only language I speak. So it's if you implement harsh rules like this, okay, you need to decide. Alright? So that communication will definitely reduce. So you try to speak Cantonese to or try to speak Malay to to your children. So they will only just answer you, that's it. They will not share a lot of what they think with you. Okay? So it will not work. Right? So usually parents give in at the end of the day. Right? They speak English to them. But anyways, our English and their English is like two different languages. Okay? don't for one moment think you're speaking English from their perspective. Okay? Fact number 10. Academic success equals financial success. Okay? So, academic qualification over here does not guarantee employment. When I say over here, that means in Australia. Okay? Doesn't really guarantee you an employment. Okay? If you think you want to do an MBA so that you can secure a job, alright, throw that away out of the window. It doesn't work like this. Alright? So they value a lot of experience. Okay? And when they talk about experience, it's a local Australian experience that they want. Alright? So unless you come from UK, Canada, or the US, then it's a different thing. Alright? But of course, if you are a trader, right, a handy type of, like a plumber, electrician, a surgeon, then that's fine. Okay, anything that is skilled, they pay highly for it. Right? So if I am a plumber, I would want to live in Australia. Okay, if I am an electrician, I want to live there. But unfortunately, I don't know how to repair the pipe. Right? So all I know is marketing. But marketing, from me, does not add much value to them, right, from their perspective. I mean, I've been to a business development manager job interview. It's for secure parking, okay? I used to work briefly here before I went over there, okay? So before I went over there, my MD told me a story, okay? His good friend is a GM in Wilson Parking, general manager in Wilson Parking. He decided to migrate over there with that typical story for the education of the kids. Okay, so he wrote that he asked my MD for help to get a job in secure parking. So he wrote, he called the boss in secure parking, because secure parking is an Australian company. So he's very close to the owner, my MD here. So he wrote him a letter, organized a position for him. Guess what? He's a parking manager in the Melbourne airport. Okay, he managed the Melbourne airport parking, right? So from a GM to a car park manager, but you still have an M there, all right? Yeah, that's different. Okay, so it's a different type of thing, all right? So local experience counts a lot. So do not have that mentality saying that, oh, I got a university degree, so that will guarantee me a job there. Okay, if you have that sort of idea, then you are big disappointment. Okay, let's see things a bit differently. Okay, so now the second part of this talk, all right, I'm going to fasten up my pace. So it's for people who are still considering. Okay, so the top 10 facts are for people who have made up their mind. I'm going to go regardless, because that is in your value. You believe in this, okay, that's fine. Okay, but that 10 points, hopefully we can, you might have no one or two or a lot of those, but hopefully it will give you a smoother transition period over there. So now for people who are still considering, we hope to offer you a different perspective from which to consider when you're deciding whether to go or not. Alright, some perspective you might not have thought before. Okay? So personal issues to consider. Alright? Basic physiological and psychological needs that a lot of people tend to ignore. Alright? Thinking that they are unimportant or trivial, but trust me, if you plan to live there permanently, it matters. Alright? Right down to whether the weather. Alright? Do you like it or not? The environment, the food. Alright? Because let's face it, in life it's supposed to be balanced. Okay? If it's not balanced, you won't be happy, you won't be satisfied. Right? So like Maslow hierarchy of needs, the first level is physiological needs. Okay? A lot of people, even ourselves, we tend to ignore this.